In 1984, he came here for HEMOC fellowship, and we never let him leave. And I am so glad we didn't. He's been such an incredible leader for us over the past 11 years in his role as department chair. When he's not busy running our large department, he's also a really accomplished researcher with an area of interest in cancer survivorship. I will turn it over to you, Dr. Neglia, for a few announcements and then your talk.
So great. So thank you, Emily. Yeah, it's kind of like we came up here for a 3-year tour and got stuck in the snow and have been here ever since. So this has been a great place to be, and I'm thankful, really, that I've had these opportunities. Just a few announcements. The first announcement is to want to raise everybody's awareness of the Crivet Lectureship, which will be coming up on May 12th. This is part of Grand Rounds. Ann Kennedy, who is Chief of Policy and Advocacy from the Every Life Foundation for Rare Diseases, is going to be the speaker, talking about measuring the lived experiences of rare diseases and the impact these diseases do have on the country at large. We will be having our a town hall meeting on April 20th. We're going to talk a little bit about that near the end of my grand rounds this morning. That town hall is going to be at 4:30 in the afternoon. We'll focus on our clinical programs. Please try and attend if at all possible. And the last thing I really feel important to do is to take note that a year ago, we did this grand rounds shortly after George Floyd was killed. This year, we are doing this grand rounds after Daunte Wright's death. And it's truly painful to live through these experiences. And I really, really hope we can all do whatever we can do as individuals, as a department, to begin to pull ourselves back together as a city and state and the country. So we have a lot of work to do. That is very clear. Okay, so the purpose of this grand rounds every year is really just to update the faculty, the staff, the learners, everybody involved with the Department of Pediatrics on where we're at, what's happened over the past years, and talk a little bit about where we are going right now. So this is my agenda. This is for today. I wanted to start by looking at the last 10 years. Emily gave me an extra year as department head, so I've actually been department head for 10 years, not 11. So we'll talk a little bit about the timeline over those 10 years, do a little review of where we've been in 2020, some updates from education, our clinical and research missions, and then at the end, talk about some things that we are going to be working on over 2021 and into 2022. I want to start by thanking everybody who helps pull things together on a day-to-day basis. Ann Bloomer, Lamont, my assistant, Levon Anderson, who leads our HR group, Christy Flanagan-Villar, and Elizabeth Patty from the foundation, who work tirelessly for all of us. Emily Borman-Shope, Emily Gray, Amy Gaug, who all have contributed to this presentation, as have Lori Wallen, Angela Pascaltzis-Mortari, Vice Chair for Research, and Michael Georgia, the Executive Vice Chair. And then Rob Super and Mike Rose, who have also done a little bit of work for this, but do massive amounts of work day in and day out for the department. So 10 years ago, we were moving. It is amazing that it is that long ago, but the news 10 years ago is that we were moving into the South Tower and the Riverside campus. We moved from Unit J, which if you've been here in 1984, before this thing was called the University of Minnesota Medical Center, we called it Unit J as they were digging the hole in the ground. And we moved from the 5th floor primarily, and a little bit on the 4th floor where the BMT unit was, across the river. I don't know how many of you remember our life on the East Bank. It was mostly double occupancy rooms. I remember having, 15-year-olds in the room with 6-month-olds, which was never really fun. We're constantly closing rooms for isolation, for C. diff, for respiratory infection. And it was a little bit of controlled chaos. It was busy. Walking down the halls was a matter of dodging isolation carts and tricycles and whatever else. So we basically pulled it together back in during the first decade of this millennium. A lot of credit goes to John Schreiber, who was chair of the department, as we really started to envision and develop a University of Minnesota Children's Hospital. Move day came up, and I really want to acknowledge Sam Gupta. Sam Gupta, like me and all of you, was 10 years younger at the time. Sam coordinated the move from the East Bank to the West Bank. He had a lot of help, but led that process. It went really well. We only lost one patient, and that was a young man who took a ride to St. Paul in the ambulance, but then came back. Somehow the ambulance driver, well, I know exactly how he did it. The ambulance driver got on the wrong ramp onto 94, had to go down and turn around. Everything worked out good in the end. That same week we were doing all this, we were transitioning to Epic from Allscripts. So this was quite the event. We moved here to the South Tower on the west bank of the Mississippi. Our space at that time included 2 24-bed med-surg wards. So this is the 5th and 6th floors of the current Children's Hospital, a 24-bed BMT unit, and 24 beds of pediatric ICU, critical care. Obviously, the major change, there are lots of major changes, was the entire structure of where we went to work. I remember coming in after we had completely moved over. We had moved a good number of patients. It wasn't packed full, but it was pretty full, and it was eerily quiet. Nurses were distributed. There was not stuff in the hall. The whole experience was just dramatically different. This has been a great thing, and it's been wonderful to have spaces like this to offer our patients, offer their families. Certainly having large private rooms is a much simpler way to take care of patients than having double rooms and these very tiny little private rooms we had on the other side of the river. So this has all been good, but this is not fixing everything. What we don't have here, we have no new neonatology space. We moved over, and neonatology, which had been here since the mid-90s, basically, well, essentially stayed the same. We now have a new postpartum ward on the 7th floor of the Children's Hospital, but that wasn't there when we moved in. When we moved in, we did not have the Wilf Auditorium. We did not have the conference center. All that has been outfitted and brought to fruition through philanthropy. And again, Elizabeth Patty, Christy Flanagan-Villard, Nick Engblom have all been part of allowing this to happen. Similarly, the Kyle Rudolph End Zone, the chapel, the media suite, and a whole lot more has been added. So we are still evolving in this space. We're still growing in this space, but we are going to have some more growing to do. I think it's time we start talking for real about adding an additional tower. Neonatology space, and I say that euphemistically because neonatology does not have enough space. Neonatology looks like the neonatology unit that I left at Jefferson Davis County Hospital in Houston in 1984. We have large bays of children. When children need a lot of technology, they're just packed in there. So that's a big issue. Our clinic space is running very tight now on the West Bank. Our infusion space is actually very busy, and we're starting to bump up against issues there. And we need to expand our operating rooms. So this is work that's ongoing, and hopefully we'll start to see come to fruition during this decade. We also need a dedicated pediatric clinical research center. We're working with the foundation to try and identify a donor who could help move this forward. We are been doing this kind of catch as you can, using space on the BMT ward when somebody needs to stay overnight, using the infusion center for pharmacokinetic studies and other things. But this is not the way really we should be doing this. So dedicated pediatric clinical research center needs to be on the list of things to do. There has been a lot that has happened in the past 10 years, and it's sometimes hard to really appreciate everything. We did not have a strong child abuse program at that time. We were really starting to develop it with Rich Kaplan, but over the years, we now, with Nancy Harper's leadership, have the Otto Bremer Trust Center for Safe and Healthy Children. This is really an outstanding resource for everyone. More recently, we've opened the Center for Pediatric Obesity Medicine. This is the work of Claudia Fox and Aaron Kelly. They have done a tremendous job of quickly building this center to focus on children with the most severe obesity, and being one of the few centers in the country that is rigorously studying the use of pharmacologic intervention for these kids with life-threatening obesity. We used virtual reality to separate conjoined twins several years ago. Those twins are doing well. We have recently moved forward with the Masonic Institute for the Developing Brain. You've heard about this a little bit before during faculty meetings. This is moving full speed ahead right now. We are targeting an opening in hopefully September of this year. And we'll really change our paradigm for how we care for children with mental health issues, behavioral issues, and how we connect our clinical practice to research. We've had 2 pediatrician deans over the last 10 years. Aaron Friedman, who preceded me as the department head, and now Jacob Tolar, who interestingly was one of my fellows when I was a fellowship director years ago in Peds Hemonc BMT. And we've added new vice chairs, really that reflect the growing needs of the department. We've added vice chair for faculty development, Dr. Tony Moran, clinical affairs, Sarah Jane Schwarzenberg, and then most recently, a very needed role in the department that Kathy Bendel has taken on is Vice Chair for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Again, this is a partial list. I'm sure all of us could find many more things that have happened in the last 10 years that deserve a slide of their own. We have grown quite a bit in 10 years. It's hard to get a track of this, but one way to look at it is the financial growth of the department. You know, this is a thing I talk about all the time. We can divide our work really into 2 major things, our university side and our University of Minnesota physician side, so our clinical, our academic side. In fiscal year 2011, our University of Minnesota expenses were $74 million. These are the expenses that come all the way through lab expenses, the academic salaries of the faculty, also includes the residents and the fellows' salaries, but gives you an idea, $74 million. And UMP expenses were $25 million. So we're about $100 million a year budget for the Department of Pediatrics. In fiscal year 20, because we haven't closed out 21 yet, we're not quite there yet. Our University of Minnesota expenses were up 45% to $107,000. Again, this is a combination of expanding research and expanding faculty. Our clinical expenses on the UMP side were up to $46 million. That's an 80% increase. And that's being driven a lot by our additions to faculty. So overall growth over these 9 years, 10 years has been about 54%. We've moved from $100 million to $154 million. We've grown in terms of faculty and staff as well. In 2010, if I would have given this talk, I would have been talking about 133 faculty. In 2021, we're now talking about 209 faculty. This includes some people we have not onboarded yet, so we have 6 more coming. 3 people are moving on to other positions, but we're now above 200 faculty. Staff have gone up as well, not quite as dramatically as faculty, but certainly have gone up considerably. In May of 2015, this is the best data we can get because the university changed its system. We had 533 staff, excluding our undergraduates and the temporary casual staff. This has gone up to 796 now, or I'm sorry, 651 without the undergraduates and staff. So we've grown a lot. We have been judicious in our hiring of infrastructure. We try to balance that as closely as we can. I give Rob Super, Levon Anderson a lot of credit for finding ways to make this department effective and efficient. So 2020 in review, new faculty, some philanthropy and events, mission update, and then a little bit onto what's next. So we brought in a lot of people in 2020. We have new hires in nephrology, pulmonary, sleep medicine, genetics. In genetics, we brought in Charlie Billington, Bill Dobbins from Seattle, Nishita Pillai from Texas Children's Hospital. So I've expanded that group out considerably. We have added Hailey Batt to the GI group, another hepatologist, which is very important for us to have. Calla Brown has joined the Division of General Pediatric and Adolescent Health. We've finished the recruitment of Dr. Damian Fair from Oregon Health Sciences University, and Damian is bringing faculty with him. Eric Fezco has already joined us here, as has Oscar Miranda Dominguez and Anita Rudolph. We are still bringing on some additional faculty as the Center for Masonic Institute for the Developing Brain rolls forward. Jill Foster joined us as the director of the Division of Pediatric Infectious Disease, moving here in the middle of a pandemic to take this on. Janine Jarnes joined the faculty now in genetics and metabolism. Julia Johnson-Ralphs, Rachel Koski, Annie White in neonatology, Amanda Kastabakken in clinical behavioral neurosciences. Critical care is continuing to expand, especially as we build our relationship with Hennepin County Medical Center. So that includes the recruitment of Sasha Kumar, Rachel Poppelman, and more recently, we are continuing to add people to that group. Lan Nguyen has joined us to take over our palliative care program. We very much welcome her and are excited about that. Nick Sasson has joined the emergency faculty, emergency medicine faculty, Kavisha Shaw in cardiology, Beth Thielen in infectious diseases, Emily Wagner in hospital medicine. So lots and lots of growth this year. We had a number of departures in 2020, including Peg Semrud-Kleichman, who retired. Ron Furnival has retired. Cliff Cashton has officially retired. Avi Katz has left our program. Mike Maurer has sort of retired, but sort of not. He is continuing his research, and Rich Vahey has retired. Ansel Abney also moved on from the hospital medicine group. I also want to point out a very sad departure, and that was the loss of Dr. Mariella Pierpont. Dr. Pierpont was an outstanding geneticist and cardiologist that had been a member of this department for decades. And like many of you, we very much miss Mariella, and wanted to acknowledge her unfortunate departure as well. More hires are coming in during 2021. Darko Boshinowski has joined the faculty in the blood and marrow transplant group. Sam Goldfarb has come from Philadelphia to take on the director of the, that should say, Cystic Fibrosis Center, not CV Center. Sorry, Sam, if I gave you a start. Nick Kushar has joined the critical care division. Vivian Lucci, emergency medicine. Jana O'Brien in dog paw. Phil Plaisir has taken on the chief resident slot. Sarah Ratz has joined the Center for Pediatric Obesity Medicine as a gastroenterologist. And then Joy Resch, former fellow, has come back to join the critical care division. I also want to acknowledge the promotions from this year. This has been a great year for promotions. These are all promotions from assistant to associate professor. Julia Isengart in clinical behavioral neurosciences, Gwen Fisher in critical care, Abe Jacob, hospital medicine, Brandon Moriarty in PT-MOC, along with Kareem Sadak in PT-MOC and Lucy Turcott in PT-MOC. Betsy Murray in clinical behavioral neurosciences, Mark Osborne in blood and marrow transplant, Asha Sidapa, who's at our affiliated program at Hennepin in neonatology, Boris Sudell, moving up in gastroenterology, and Futran in neonatology. So congratulations to everybody who has been promoted who will be officially promoted here on July 1st. But all of these have cleared the deans and the regents, and we're good to go. We have had a number of events, and I'm just going to go through these very quickly. We had some very large donations, over $1 million donations from Minnesota Masonic Charities for the MIDB, the Schultz Family Foundation also for MIDB. Kids First Fund continues to fund Fanconia's anemia research here at the University of Minnesota and throughout the United States. But that is coordinated by Dr. McMillan in our blood and marrow transplant division. CCRF, a longstanding donor, a remarkable donation from Mike Allen to the Childhood Cancer Program supporting David Larga-Spada's lab. Dr. Forrest and Joan Adams, an estate commitment for the Forrest Adams Chair in Pediatric Cardiovascular Health. Laura Miller's gift for the pediatric brain tumor and survivorship research, and Drs. Peter D. and Sue Stacy for another gift to support the Pediatric Hem-Onc Fellowship. More and more on the other side of this page, you can see we just continue to have incredible support from our community, and this really makes a lot of what we do possible. COVID changed the face of philanthropy here, and we had a lot of support in very tangible things, from meals coming into the hospital, masks coming from donors, food cart donations, and really all of these written here are organizations that have stepped up to help in ways for our family, for our staff over 2020. We had to change the nature of philanthropy. Obviously, there are no more in-hospital visits of athletes or coaches. PJ and Heather Fleck changed from their visitations and football team visitations and things to welcome gift boxes. And here's Ava looking at her gift box. Looks like she's got a t-shirt and a few other things. Can't tell what's in her hand. Maybe it's a Gopher ticket. Certainly acknowledging PJ, who's been a great supporter. Kyle Rudolph has been great. We are going to miss him a whole lot, but I think Kyle is going to stay invested in the Children's Hospital. They did multiple huddles, again, virtually for our patients. Blythe Brendan Mann in the center here, and one of our local chefs donating meals essentially for Thanksgiving. We could not have the usual Thanksgiving buffet, so these things just all got delivered to the floors for the families. Wine Fest moved from a 2-day event to Wine Fest at home. The technology was surprising, but it actually worked out quite well. And over $500,000 was raised. We had guests log in from 19 states, 10 wine masters from basically around the world, over 2,100 bids. So this was very exciting. It was so good, we went ahead and did Fashion Fest online. This was obviously different than before, but still over $270,000 raised, over 750 people registered to be part of this. So again, thank you to everybody at the University of Minnesota Foundation for making this possible. These monies of Wine Fest, Fashion Fest, are the monies that go to discovery research, help bring new people on, really help move us in the directions we want to go as a department. So over the last 10 years, let me get that out of my way so I can see, nearly 25,000 donors have given us more than $176 million in support of the mHealth Fairview University of Minnesota Masonic Children's Hospital. So again, thank you to everybody. And many of you that are listening to this have also given. And thank you for your support of our programs. All right, we're going to just talk about some of the mission-driven parts of where we're at right now. Education obviously is a very big part of what we do and has been a big part of what we do here forever. Actually, back in California, I remember one of our neurologists had suggested I look at residency at Minnesota. And being a Southern California kid who had seen snow twice, I dismissed that very quickly. But he had been a fellow here and could not say enough good things about the program. So education really is reaches out far and wide for all of us. There was a lot to do in medical education this year. We had to adapt to COVID limitations for the medical students. Basically, they were all pulled off their rotations about a year ago now. And had to rebuild these rotations to bring them back in. So rotations got modified to have a virtual platform and a very limited in-person component. We did a great job, not we, Emily Borman-Shope and the education faculty and staff did a great job. All students who applied for pediatrics matched successfully. We had a very successful burst mentorship program for first year and second year students. And with Betsy Murray taking on the dean's role for curriculum, we have brought in one of our med peds physicians, Molly Wyman, who is our new medical student course director. So thank you, Molly, for taking this on, and congratulations, Betsy. We moved the residency recruitment to virtual. Nobody flew to Minnesota for an interview this year. Yet, as you can see from the figure here, we still had about the same number of applicants, 1,156. We had 21 applicants from our own program, which is really tracking very similar to what it's been. We interviewed almost 200 people virtually and came up with a really, really strong intern class. And we have, a wide range of people from programs, both here at the university, as well as across the Midwest and even around the world. And we're very excited about moving this group forward. So it's a talented group of young doctors that we're going to have the privilege to work with for at least the next 3 years. We also had a very successful match in medicine pediatrics, the joint program. Again, with a number of University of Minnesota students matching, but also students from Chicago, University of Wisconsin, University of South Carolina, University of Missouri. So again, great group to work with for the next 4 years here. The education program has continued to do well. It's now received its 6th cycle of support from the Minnesota Department of Health for our additional categorical residency slots. These actually allow us to do things that we couldn't do otherwise. The primary care expansion grant allows us to take an additional resident who is interested in moving out into a rural environment to practice pediatrics, and we receive $250,000 a year support for that program. Our International Immigrant Physician Grant allows us to bring a graduate of an international medical school who has been displaced from his or her own country, bring them on and bring them through a residency here in the US. And as part of this, they agree to service in an understaffed area of the state, but then also get the opportunity to rebuild their practice in medicine. So these are both great programs. Our residents did very well this year, matching in fellowships all across the United States, all the way from Children's Hospital Los Angeles to Pittsburgh. Many of them have stayed, not many of them, but several of them have stayed here at the University of Minnesota for their fellowships in Hem/Onc, hospital medicine, ID, endocrine, or rheumatology. We have people that are going to St. Jude's, to Cincinnati, Riley, CHLA, Stanford. So really a great matching year for our residents going into fellowships. And we had a really good year for matching incoming fellows. So a number of people are staying here. We're also bringing people in critical care, Hem/Onc, neonatology, nephrology, cardiology, neonatology, child abuse medicine from around the country. So we're excited to have had such a good match. As many of you know, it is getting harder and harder to compete for fellows. The number of individuals who are going into pediatric subspecialty medicine has shrunk. It's important that we actually recruit effectively and really put our best foot forward as we are recruiting these fellows in. These are likely our faculty members in years to come. Cme Grant Rounds has gone amazingly well. I don't think any of us knew how good this would go, except maybe Dr. Borman-Schoep, who may have envisioned this all along. The transition to a virtual format has doubled, if not tripled, our weekly Grand Rounds. Obviously, it's very easy to bring in speakers now from around the country because nobody's flying anywhere. But as the pandemic starts to step back a little bit, we're going to see how to not lose what we have gained here. I don't know that we have an answer to that yet, but it's important to think through. Our clinical mission is obviously very important, and we have continued to do very well. We ranked in 4 specialties this year in the US News and World Report. This should say 2021 on it. Gastroenterology and GI surgery, nephrology, diabetes and endocrine, and orthopedic surgery. So congratulations to all of these groups. We have worked to meet our challenges in physical space. The NICU, as I mentioned, has been very, very crowded. It was previously capped at 61 beds. That was actually probably not a safe cap, just in terms of how tight things were getting. So we opened 6 beds on Unit 4 to reduce the crowding. But in 2020, we were able to open up 15 additional beds on the 11th floor of the East Building. This did not come soon enough. Right now, this week, the NICU has been continuously up in the mid-60s in terms of volumes of kids. And we have had to give these 6 beds back to the Unit 4. So we are still very busy in the NICU. And again, going back to things we need to do, we really need to look at building out real good space for this group. We opened up 6 intermediate ICU beds on the 6th floor. These are open and working now. Thank you to Brian Joy from the CVICU, who has taken on the leadership of this work. But this actually allows us step-down beds when we get packed in the med-surg and CVICUs, as we often do. We had dramatic changes with COVID, and the person I really want to acknowledge here is Brandon Nathan, who had agreed to take on the role of outpatient clinic directors probably in February of last year, when we asked Dr. Schwarzenberg to take on the vice chair role. I don't think Brandon, I know Brandon had no idea what he was stepping into. We had dramatic changes with COVID. We had basically a turn on the dime shift to virtual visits. We are still, I think, to some extent, trying to understand where we land as a practice in terms of virtual and inpatient visits and how those things impact our care, our finances, our space needs. Brandon continues to work incredibly hard on this side as we work towards making our clinics efficient and available to populations that really need that. So thank you, Brian, or thank you, Brandon. This is incredibly hard work. Again, the other challenge we continue to grapple with is clinical research, and we are working on building out that additional space. I actually hoped a year ago when I gave this talk that we would have an answer to that, but not quite. One of the big things that happened in the clinical world was real structural changes to how we work with Fairview in the joint clinical enterprise. So this year, in early 2020, Chris Lemmy left the organization, and Beth Hines, who was already leading the mental health and addiction program, was asked to take on the women's and children's service line. I think most everybody's reaction, that's really my reaction, and probably even Beth's reaction, was, oh my gosh, this is going to be a huge amount for one person to handle. And it is a big job, but Beth has done an incredible job of delegating responsibilities to great people and really taken this on in an amazing way. She has partnered with Sarah Jane Schwarzenberg, our vice chair for clinical affairs. And Sarah Jane has taken on a leadership role in the women's and children's service line. This really has allowed us to consolidate our clinical practice and really bring the Fairview part of it and the UMP part of it together. This is not a done deal. There is a lot of work to do, but I really think for the first time in a long time, we actually now have the level of influence and the voices at the table we need to improve our clinical affairs. And again, your input is hugely important, and again, plugging the town hall next week because we really need to hear what you have to say. Excuse me. On the research side, we have continued a strong program here. This is our department statistics I've shown every year for the last 10 plus years. As you can see, back in 2009, 2010, we were running about $12 million a year in extramural money from the NIH. This year in 2020, we actually broke the $30 million mark, and right around $30.6 million. So this is really exciting for us to see this. We continued to score very well in terms of Blue Ridge ranking. We have been number 8 for the last 3 years. I am very confident that with the very strong additions to our research programs, we will be top 10, top 20 for years to come. Again, I want to call out Dr. Bruce Blazer and everybody involved with the Clinical Translational Science Award from the NIH. a big part of this is funding from Dr. Blazer's program. This puts us, like I said, 8th in the U.S. We are, certainly are, I think, in good company. We're a little bit behind Indianapolis. We actually would have eclipsed Indianapolis this year, except they had a bump up as well. But we are managing to stay ahead of UCLA, WashU, Stanford, some very, very good programs. Emory University remarkably went from about 5th on this list to 1st on this list. This is all based on one very large COVID grant that's held at Emory in the Department of Pediatrics. This is a pretty amazing jump. We had a number of grant recipients. 84 new grants or competitive renewals this year. So these are not the continuing renewals you get on your grant that are not necessarily taken for granted, but don't have to be competed. These are competitive renewals or brand new grants. We had 48 unique PIs for these 84 grants. And again, it's great that this came from 13 different divisions. So stressing not just breadth, not just depth, but breadth of the programs. And this is the list of the NIH or federal awards. Milena Bellin and Milena and Greg, 2 UO1s. Bryce Finstad, a new R21. Eric Bomberg, congratulations on his K23 Faculty Development Award. Damien Fair and Nico Dosenbach, a new R01. Michael Georgiev and Jeff Wozniak from Psychiatry, their R56. Peter Gordon's R37. This is actually a rather unique situation where the NIH is so impressed with an application, they take it from R01 to R37 and award you extra years of funding. So congratulations, Peter. Aaron Kelly, congratulations, 2 new R01s this year. Michael Kaiba, a new R01. Dave Largaspada and Nancy Ratner, an R01. Tony Moran renewing the T32 for endocrinology. Brandon Moriarty's R01. Angela Mortari's VA grant. Logan's R01 and Logan renewing his T32 training grant. And then last but certainly not least, Dr. Tolar renewing his R01 as well. So congratulations to everybody. These are very hard work and do very important research. So we've talked a lot about, sort of where we are, numbers, residents in, fellows out, where we've been. I think we need to spend some time over this next year really focusing on our internal development as much as our external development. One of the things that's become very clear to me, and we'll show more data on this as some stuff from UNP comes out, but issues of faculty engagement, issues of burnout, issue of wellness are very real. And we need to address these things with the same vigor that we address many other things we take on in the research realm or teaching realm or clinical realm. We have sources of information that we get every year. We get a biannual University of Minnesota engagement survey. And we also have created a faculty wellness committee that's led by Jill Foster and Chris Boyce. But we need to take this stuff seriously, and we need to try and address these issues, because these will just chew away at the core of who we are over time. So the faculty engagement survey is something that the university as a whole does every 2 years. And we had started on this, the last one of these was released in February of 2020, and we were starting to work on this at about the time COVID hit. So all of this got pushed back. But that engagement survey gave us some important findings. So first, we had a 61% response rate in pediatrics. It's at 174 that were sent. It's not a great response rate, but it's acceptable. Was about in line with what the university had overall. The faculty scored very well on measures of commitment and dedication. So this compares us to 79%, based on the responses to this survey, were characterized as having high level of commitment and dedication. That's the same way it was in 2017, much better than it was in 2015. I have no idea, I have no recollection of what happened in 2015, but this was low. Better than the faculty across the medical school, better than the provost, which is basically the Minneapolis campus of the university, and better than the university at large. The thing that we did not score well on is effective environment. And again, we just seem to be stuck bouncing right around 60%, feeling that our environment is effective right now. What happens is you roll these two things together, commitment and dedication and effective environment. And if you believe that you are working in an effective environment and you're committed and dedicated to your work, you fall into the category of engaged. And about 45% of our respondents fell into this category of engaged. That's less than half. That is not where we should accept being. If you are committed and dedicated, and again, that's the vast majority of our faculty, but see that we are not having an effective environment, that faculty group is characterized as frustrated. If you are just burned out on it, that it's not working, the environment's not working out, you don't feel committed, that's a disengaged group. And then there's a small group called detached, where people are positive about the environment, but don't feel committed to the program. So this is an area that we need to work in. And this is a group, this frustrated group is a group that I would really love to shift up into this engaged group. So Amy Esler and Rich Vahey were charged with reviewing this engagement survey. They worked on this, Rich worked on this up until the time of his retirement, and then Amy finished this up. They identified a number of themes that we did not do well in. One of them is we did not do well in telling people that we were listening to them and trying to act on these surveys. So we need to do that. We need to establish a clear and promising direction for the department. Work conditions were an issue. That concerns that our work conditions did not support productivity and efficiency. There was also concern about expectations, feedback, respect, and recognition, as well as resources for research and scholarship. And I should point out to people that what was on these surveys was not just the scores that you saw, but also the written in comments from the participants. So Amy and her group were able to actually look at the combination of scoring, but also what were people actually saying, what was the experience they wanted to share. More recently, Jill Foster and Chris Boyce, through the Faculty Wellness Committee, have really talked about what things are interfering with our work day to day. And high on the list, clinical interface with Fairview. How are our responsibilities divided up between Fairview and UMP? How do we deal with different calendars, different emails, and different software? These are choices, and these make things more complicated. Also, an issue was really how do we develop the support we need to do our jobs, especially at a time when there's work at home expectations, but really no resources. Restrictive VA policies that are interpreted to not allow us to use funds to support phones or internet access. But we all know that you're not getting on the internet if you not have cable and if you don't have a phone to do two-step authentication, but we're being asked to do visits from home. We're asking to do our meetings from home right now. So we need to develop all this, and we need to be better communicators as we do this. So there are some things that we can do, I think, fairly quickly right now. One of the things that Rob Super and Emily Gray are working on right now is an annoyance that has come up that's trivial, but not really all that trivial. All of us have, all the clinicians have Fairview emails as well as University of Minnesota emails. For a long time, it seemed that all of the Fairview emails were being forwarded through the system to our university addresses. This seems to be no longer the case. And a few times in the last few weeks, we've had the medical staff office at Fairview coming out and being upset with people for not responding to their questions about their credentialing, whatever. We need to get this fixed and get these emails forwarded. We are working with the Department of Medicine to look for solutions to using BEA for things we need at home. Between pediatrics and medicine, we have well over 50% of the medical school, and I think it's really time to start pushing here. We need to clarify our responsibilities for support personnel so we understand what the CMAs, what other people are doing in the clinic. And again, we need to communicate more effectively. So there is a whole lot to do, but we will take this on and we will do it. The other thing we have to do is we have to stay true to our mission. And our mission really that we need to remind ourselves of is generating knowledge through research, applying this knowledge to the highest quality healthcare for children, and providing the best possible education of our next generation of healthcare professionals. This is pretty important mission, and one that I think we discharge very, very well. But to that end, we need to refresh it periodically. And last year, again, we had talked about doing a pediatric planning retreat. This is now to be determined as we work through the pandemic. But we want to create a 5-year department plan for pediatrics. We did a plan in 2013 called 2020 Vision. That plan needs to be revitalized. Our faculty from the Leadership Development Program are going to work to lay the groundwork for this, but all faculty are going to be involved in developing this. We have 5 working groups looking at growth, quality, safety, diversity and disparities, as well as faculty engagement. And these are the work groups and their leads. Brandon Nathan leading the clinical, Patty Hubday education, Alicia Kunin-Batson research, and Ashley Loomis community relations. So each group is going to identify strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities as we get this rolling here over the next couple of months. So the last thing I wanted to do is essentially say thank you. And I really I'd like to say thank you to everybody personally in the department all at one time, but we're going to say thank you to the Division of Infectious Disease, who really were asked to step up and do a whole lot during this pandemic. And each person on this slide, in their own way, stepped up and contributed to this. So Jill Foster came in to lead the division. Jill not only led the division, Jill has worked with Shane McAllister to actually become part of a pediatric vaccine trial. And Jill serves as a national spokesman and represented this department well across national and international media. Dr. Mark Schleiss has not only been really the face of infectious disease for this department all over the country through media, providing guidance and interpretation of data. But Mark also retooled part of his lab to look at passage of coronavirus in breast milk, working with Aaron Osterholm. has just done an amazing job of holding his labs and programs together here. Shane McAllister, not only started the PTLD clinic, but also took on this new vaccine trial. We're excited very excited for that work. Shane has also taken a leading role as a consultant for our transplant populations. Beth Thielen joined this group, and I congratulate Beth for her persistence in joining this group and launching a lab during the pandemic. Bazak Sharon and everybody in this group worked to develop our COVID pathways. Bazak has developed a post-COVID clinic. Laura Norton not only kept up her work in antibiotic stewardship, but stepped up to help develop COVID pathways and look at this at an institutional level. Beth Swanson, part of our infection control team, worked through the programs we have all the way from protection of our staff, our visitors, as well as our patients. Craig Byerly kept his lab moving, actually was able to step up and help Beth Thielen in terms of laboratory space, because the laboratory space Beth was slated to go into essentially got usurped by COVID testing. So thank you, Craig, and thank you, Beth, for your flexibility. And then certainly last but not least, Dr. Pat Ferrari, really for her work in COVID diagnostics across the entire University of Minnesota, as well as her leadership in the labs. So with that, I'm going to say thank you to everyone, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions I can. Sorry, we ran this to 8:28, it looks like. So go ahead and take some questions.
We did have a couple of, with such a large faculty, there's a couple of minor corrections. So sorry to anybody who didn't get included on the new 2020. I think Viv Luce in emergency medicine may have inadvertently been left off the list.
No, she was in the early arrivals, I think.
Oh, great. Well, anyway, welcome to her. Kathy Bendel was on the left side of that ID slide, I think, starting them off in 2020 before Jill came. So just
That's
a couple
true. of sorry, Kathy. Thank you.
There were a couple of shout outs that came in the chat. I guess one of the things I would wonder, Joe, maybe as a question is, what do you hope to be talking about next year at this time? What would be a goal or an accomplishment that you would be proud of our department to put on a slide next year?
Thanks, Emily. That's an easy one. I think there are really a couple of things. One is I really would like us to have an answer for our clinical research center. This is just a thorn in the side of everybody who's trying to do clinical research here, and we need to get this thing done. So I'd like to be able to have that pathway clearly outlined. I don't know that we'll have something built, but that would be one thing very high on the list. The other real thing I think that we can do that will generate so much more for us is to really feel engaged across the faculty. Again, that's just moving people from this feeling of frustration that my work, I really, people that come into work every day, I don't actually believe there's anybody in this department that comes to work every day that doesn't want to do an outstanding job. But we have to find the ways to allow that to happen and make it easier. It's hard with this three-headed monster we have between Fairview, the university, and UMP, but it is certainly doable. And that's probably the single largest thing, is to see us really making progress on our strategic plan, our engagement, and actually utilizing everybody's skills as best they can to make this work.
Great, thanks, Joe. Just another plug for faculty, please come to the town halls. I'm fortunate to get to spend quite a bit of time with Dr. Neglia and the group of vice chairs together, and we really are listening and want to work on the things that are important to all of the faculty. So raise your voices, share your ideas. We're better when we do this work together, and just excited to see all of the things we'll be able to put on the slides next year. Thanks very much.
Okay. All right. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Bye.